Please pray with me. God, I ask that the words of my mouth, meditations of my heart would be acceptable to you. And I ask that the ears and the hearts of those sitting here today would be open to you. And we ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
So, the Good Samaritan. We've heard the story. It's probably one of the best known of the stories. And when I saw that that was the gospel for today, I was like, cool. This is an easy piece of cake. Talk about love, we're done. No. There's more to say about this than the priest and the Levite walked past the wounded man and did nothing, whereas the Samaritan, who was despised by them, was the one who stopped and helped. There's more to say than that. I want to look at this partly in two different ways. I want you to imagine, what was interesting to me was that basically I had written this sermon, or what started out to be this sermon, prior to looking at the pod lesson for this past week. And I looked at that pod lesson and I'm like, wow, a lot of this lines up, cool. And one of those things was, which our pod did not, pod being Principles of Discipleship, that's our Bible study groups, ours did not go into this part of it, and I kind of told them that I kept it from them because I was going to throw it out at you today. And that is, let's bring this story of the Good Samaritan into the 21st century. Because I don't know about you, but priest, Levite, Samaritan, my head kind of understands, but I don't relate 100%. So, let's imagine that the wounded individual was maybe an Arab, maybe an African American male. Would you stop and help? Let's reverse it. Just give it a little different take. If you were the wounded individual and say an African American male approached you to help, would you be wary of him? So I don't want you to answer that, because I think that we're really quick to say, well, of course I would help. I don't care who it is. Or, no, I wouldn't react to, someone coming up to help me. But is that really true? I don't think so. I think Ruth said a few weeks ago that whether or not we like to admit it, we all are bigots in some form or another. And when I stopped to answer my own question, being, if I was wounded and an African American male came up to help me, would I be wary? Yes, I would. But you know what? Society has taught me to be that way as a white female, and I don't want to respond that way. But I've been taught to respond that way. And it takes time to unteach or unlearn some of the things that we've been taught. But it's time for us to unlearn some of the things that we've been taught. It would be a really natural transition to, bring some of this, the Orlando shootings into this. And obviously more shootings since then. And We look at a young man who is identified as Muslim. You know, why would he hate? We talked in pod about a couple weeks ago about what was the opposite of love. First thing that pops into my mind is hate. But then Sandy suggested that the opposite of love is fear.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Makes sense, doesn't it? And I believe that we hate because we fear. We don't like to be afraid. And so was that young man afraid? Maybe he was afraid of what he didn't understand. He was afraid because he didn't understand maybe the differences between him and them. Maybe he didn't understand himself. And we fear that sometimes too. But it really doesn't matter at this point. It only matters in that what is going to help us to overcome our fears, especially when they involve people. I think a lot of it is going to be education. The only way to unlearn something is to learn something different. So, I do believe that part of our upbringing can be undone by learning new ways of being, new ways of thinking. And eventually when we start to, it starts out as a mind game. I told you that I would react to an African American male being wary. That's how I would react. Is that how I want to react? Absolutely not. That is not how I want to. So I have to start with my head and get it that 12 inches to my heart, which is like a really long way. And the only way I can do it is to educate myself. And to not pay attention to what the differences are in people. We say that differences and the fact that we're different makes us interesting. It also makes us bigots. These are the instances I don't like. God has a way of messing with you. And even last night, God was changing this, and so I kind of tried to tell God not to anymore, but it doesn't always work. Look around this room. We're an us, right? But we're different. Some of us have more money than others. Some of us have different cultural, ethnic backgrounds. Some of us have different political beliefs. But we're an us. We are us. Why can't everybody be us? If we educate ourselves, then there's not anything to fear, and there's not anything to hate. Why is it that, you're going to get a little bit of maybe one of my pet peeves here. Why is it that we judge people based on what we see or hear in the media? LGBTQ people are based on perhaps what people see in pride celebrations. We're a wild and crazy bunch. You guys are. We judge Muslims based on what we see in the media. Certainly the young man in Orlando was identified as Muslim. And a lot of what we see isn't good. So, what do? All Muslims are terrorists. Is that fair? No, it's not. The media did do one thing. My pet peeve with them is that they concentrate for too long on the negative before getting to the positive. Okay? But there was positive. Betty had told us a story about how after the Orlando shootings, all of a sudden she had family and friends calling her every week to check up on her. Because until they were watching the media coverage, they did not know how she lived every day as a gay person. Is that a good thing? Absolutely, because that educated. Those are people who probably didn't understand and never tried to understand up until that point. And I had mentioned before that part of it is our upbringing. And how do we avoid that when we're perhaps bringing up children? Karen has a daughter that I have shared with her for almost 20 years. And when Karen first came out to her daughter when Jill was 11 years old, Jill was not a happy camper. But Karen never changed who she was. And she continued to love her child. She continued to be who she was. And over the years, what that did was taught Jill to have empathy for other people, because she was told that. And she saw her mother walk that talk. So fast forward to June in Orlando. The morning of those shootings, Jill called me in tears. Because of her being brought up in a gay family, she understood this classification of people as because she knew what we were about. She knew we were just people. I mean, face it, I don't know about you, but I am just a people. And that was awesome, and that gave her the empathy and allowed her to be so sad that it brought her to tears for what had happened. But then that has carried out as each one of these shootings has happened since then too. And she'll post on Facebook, you know, how sad she is and why is this happening and everything. So we can raise up our children this way. And then we will raise up a generation that is more us rather than us versus them. I want to try and sort of bring something to your attention in how we kind of divide ourselves. We don't really think about it, but we do. We make judgments about each other. We label each other. And that divides us. It divides us rather than unite us. It separates us. So, Karith, I'm sorry I'm walking to the back.
That's all right.
I'm going to ask you standing here with Kenny and Dave, and I am going to ask you in your heads, you don't say it out loud. Think about how you would, if I said to you, which one of these guys is Kenny? You think about how it is you would describe to me who Kenny is out of the two of these people. I would describe them as Kenny is the one in the dark shirt, Dave is the one in the light shirt. Is that how you did it in your head? That's not how we always do it. Thank you, guys. I did warn him ahead of time I was going to do that. Just, yeah. I'm not that bad. We classify each other, we label each other, we judge each other. There is, so many different classifications of, say, outcast people, which are the ones that Muslims, Jews, Native American, African American, Latino, vertically challenged, just trying to see if you were paying attention. I didn't mean that part. But also, whether you like it or not, the KKK. We all an outcast people. So it doesn't have to just be LGBTQ people, and it's not. This us versus them is not just about us as LGBTQ people. So we think about how we judge. Think about how you judge. Is it fair? Is it fair for people to judge us based on what they see on TV? Is it fair for us to judge all Muslims based on what you see on TV? Is it fair for us to judge all African Americans based on what you see on TV? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Lydia put a post on Facebook not too long ago. She's sitting there rolling her eyes like, oh my. She's probably thinking, well, which one? She put a quote from the Dalai Lama, and I thought it was pretty appropriate for today, in my mind. So if you can go with my mind, great. The quote was this. The Dalai Lama said, "Love is the absence of judgment." And I will den that by saying it's the absence of judgment leads to the absence of fear, leads to the absence of hate. That's our progression. Which then leads to us being able to love, no matter who. There was another thing that I saw on Facebook, because we know if it's on Facebook, it's true, right? It was a quote from Andrea Perron, who is an author. And she said, it should be easy to remember, but this is when I'll mess up. We all know what the golden rule is, right? Thank you. Do unto others as we would have others do unto you, as you would have others do unto you. So, here's what happens when you don't look at your paper. All right, so I'm going to wing this. And I'm pretty sure, here it is. So Andrea Perron's version of the golden rule is this. Live this way. Do unto others as if you are the others.
Amen.
Live this way. Do unto others as if you are the others. Wow. That means there is nothing other than others. We are all others. I really enjoyed that. If I were to go back and ask those same questions that were asked in the beginning of why do we hate and why do we fear and who do we fear? By the time you get around to do unto others as if you are the others, there's no need for that, is there? No need for that. Those of you who know me, I know at this point in time are a little worried because I haven't given you a definition. Do not be concerned because here it is. Now I have to try and find that too. All right. According to Merriam-Webster, the definition of neighbor is this. 1, a person who lives next to or near another person. And 2, a person or thing that is next to or near another. That was what they called the simple definition. They also have a full definition, which includes the simple definitions as well as these two. One living or located near another, and fellow human. So, there really was more to be said about our neighbor. Do we really believe that all of our fellow humans are our neighbors? I think in our heads we do. Kind of going back a little bit again, full circle. Do we really believe that? Really believe that? I can throw out a million questions at you, and I might, if I can remember them all. You know, they go with the why do we hate, who do we fear, is it fair to judge, is it fair to label? And I don't want you to answer those questions, but I do want you to think about it. I want you to think about what's your honest answer when there's no one else sitting next to you or anything, no one else in the room. It's just you and God. And you have to be honest. Because the only way that we can heal from our misinformation or non-information is to be honest. Period. We label such stupid things, but we label everything. Karen and I live in St. Augustine Shores. We're residents. And as residents in St. Augustine Shores, there's certain amenities that we're entitled to use that you non-residents can't.
Bummer.
We don't have a gate. That's a good thing. Because I couldn't go play golf at Marshall Creek Country Club if I wanted to. Is that a reason to divide ourselves? I'm currently unemployed and wishing I was retired, but in my job searches, as I fill out applications, they have their equal opportunity questions that they want you to answer. You're not required to, but they would like it. You know, there are questions about your gender, your ethnicity, your disability status. And I started out in this process answering those questions, and then I kind of started getting mad. Because they were asking me to label myself. And I didn't really like that. So I quit answering their questions. They didn't give me the one option that I would have chosen and would have answered in their questions. Am I white, Latino, African American, whatever? They didn't give me the choice of human being. Now that I would answer. We're human beings, that's it. So I would ask you to try and change the way your brain works. Change the way your body responds that you have no control over. And then we can maybe get to a place where we're not killing each other. And that would be a happy place. That is my prayer for each one of us, me included. Please pray with me. God, we thank you. We thank you for hard questions. We thank you for hard answers. And we thank you that you will guide us and that you will lead us. That there is more to be said. And you're the one who's going to say it. In the name of Jesus, amen.